Who's going to talk first?
You did.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, you're it.
First to talk has to edit. Hey, this is Daniel Zaffron.
This is Greg Gonzalez with 2 Z's and 2 G's.
In a row.
Only consonants, no vowels.
Because when you listen to him, you're sawing logs.
Wow.
With 2 G's.
I cannot believe that this is happening to me right now. This is slander? Is that slander?
Ambush. That's what you get. The he who talks first laughs last.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, we're here to introduce our newest field trip episode. This is the first time this has happened where a field trip episode has tied into the episode of the month that it's in, because we went to the Forest Lawn Museum, and you've been listening to us talk about Forest Lawn over and over and over and over. I've seen the statistics.
Yeah, you are anticipating a field trip now. You can't wait for it to happen. And guess what? It happened.
Here it is. It happened.
Yeah.
It's like the Star Wars trailer. It happened. And I
now,
tried to buy tickets for, 2 hours.
It was 2 hours of you. Why can't it work? Why doesn't it work? Why doesn't it work? Why doesn't it work? I don't know.
It works, but I want better seats. So yeah, we went, when was it? It was last week to the Forest Lawn Museum. Mm-hmm. We spoke with James Fishburne, who is the curator of the museum.
Very nice guy. He found me when I was lost in the parking lot. Well, and then he's like, is Daniel coming? I'm like, probably not.
He doesn't waste his time with these sorts of things. He doesn't do the field trips. He drops in a track later of him reacting. Oh.
Whoa.
Wow. Pizza, you say?
That's pretty big. You just say about everything. That's pretty big. Let's loop that.
I talk about it in the episode, but I was so proud of myself. I was like, I'm here right on time. I can't believe it. Yeah. And then, as is always my experience in a graveyard, I was in the wrong place at the right time, and I realized I even texted the guy. I'm like, hey, I'm here parked, and then I realized I was on the bottom of the hill. Mm-hmm. He's on the top of the hill, and I ended up being late.
That Forest Lawn, all the Forest Lawns, they certainly make a meal of like the weaving roads. Yeah. But it's beautiful up there.
Yeah, it's
one of the best
it's on
views
the
of the
top.
city.
Yeah, it is one of the best views of the city, and it's a really nice museum. And let's mention the exhibit that's going on right now. The current exhibit. First of all, this whole place, as we talked about, it was one of the first places in the city to have free, publicly available art. Yeah. And it still is. And this museum is free, and there's free parking. There's a ton of parking. Mm-hmm. The current exhibit is the Elevated Eye aerial photography, past and present. It's open until March 8th. The museum itself is open Tuesday to Sunday, 10 to 5. But yeah, he showed us around, and they give you like magnifying glasses to look at these like huge dollhouse almost photos of early Glendale and early Los Angeles.
Each photo, you're going from a different decade, and like the city is just growing, and there's more people and more cars. It's a tremendous exhibit. I really like it. If you like history and you like LA, obviously you're going to like
Obviously, you're not going to like us. But then there's the other part of the museum, which also had, their permanent collection, and it had like the crumbled statue of David. Yeah. It had the head and the foot. There were a lot of other sculptures, and there was one by the guy who did Mount Rushmore. And they had a gift shop, which I jokingly was like, yeah, we'll get to see the gift shop. We didn't get to see the gift shop. I wanted to buy some stuff.
Nobody was working.
I know. I realized that.
You had $1 in your hand, and you're like, but where do I give?
Should I put this in David's toe?
Part of the aerial photography exhibit, somebody had taken photos with a drone of an entire street length, right?
Oh, yeah.
And like routes.
Like going down Wilshire.
Yeah, and it's like from the Pacific Ocean until like downtown LA. And like in 8 steps, you had gone through all of Wilshire. It was really great.
It was a really good exhibit. It had a lot of current and old photographs that both are interesting to look at of Los Angeles and other cities. Yeah. They had Paris. They had... Mm-hmm. I saw Paris. I saw France. There was this one aerial photograph of your tidy whities.
I hate this podcast so much. And then you had talked about the resurrection.
Oh, yeah.
Painting, and like you're like,
as I always do, I always drop that into it.
So you are, we're recording the episode, and you're like, it's really big. I'm like, got it. And then we go out there, and you're like, it's really big. I'm like, I'm sure. And then the guy James Fishburne's like, it's really big. I'm like, I'm sure.
This is the painting that we talked about in the episode of the resurrection,
where they needed to build around it.
They built an auditorium to house this thing.
So everyone's like, it's really big. I'm like, cool, let's see it. And I get there, I'm like, this is the biggest thing I've ever seen.
Well, because we went into what felt like entering like Notre Dame Cathedral. And then it turns out we're just in a movie theater pretty much. Yeah. And it's this huge auditorium. It wasn't set up to display it. So we went to the backstage area and saw the resurrection painting, which was like, we were too close to look at it in an eyeful.
I'm trying to think of the right movie, but somewhat like
King Kong.
It might be not even, because like I'm looking at something that I think is big, which was the curtains and the projector screen, and then I'm like, oh, Oh, what's that about? That's a giant thing behind it, and then like you think what you're looking at is big, and then you like kind of look back like and it's way bigger.
It's like Godzilla's foot. He first shows up in the movie, his foot lands next to you, and you look at it, and then you keep looking up and up and up. That's how it was a painting of Godzilla's resurrection.
Can't get rid of that guy.
We got a peek towards the crucifixion, but I have to go back. I want to see the exhibit again, and I want to experience the whole show that they do with that. And the rest of the place has a ton of art like we talked about, and it's a nice place.
It's a very nice place. Yeah, they're going to be doing a Day of the Dead thing soon, right?
Yeah, he said they were going to be showing Coco there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Well, you'll hear that again in a few seconds.
Act surprised when it comes up.
Yeah. And, we do this podcast, so how about you leave us some feedback? Show us you love us, baby. Leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. 5 stars and some words is nice.
Before we sign off, though.
No, we're not signing off. This is plug time.
Oh, plug time. Can I plug?
Yeah, but I'm kind of in the middle of my plugs.
Go for your plug. Continue your plug.
Twitter at LA Meekly. Instagram LA_Meekly. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. We can send you a handwritten postcard, which I could have bought from the gift shop, but no one was working there.
So I had to steal it.
So I stole from a cemetery. Watch our videos on YouTube and stuff like that. Now, what do you have to say for yourself?
I collaborated with our good friend and comedian Jake Cannon on his wonderful podcast, Look Back Machine, which takes very specific, I don't know how else to put this. He's done like a whole thing on the cartoon Recess, like a docuseries on it. He's done a thing on Rugrats and Nickelodeon. He's done a bunch of Nicolas Cage movies. He did one on Stigmata, which is really good. So he'll take like a movie or a show that not a lot of people gave enough attention to, and then he'll just do
like Rugrats?
Like Rugrats. Yeah, that unpopular show Rugrats. But him and I collaborated on a Vincent Price episode for Halloween, and it should be coming out this week, so make sure to check it out.
Yeah, for you Prince heads. No, not Prince. Vincent Prince.
God.
The artist formerly known as Vincent Price.
I feel like there's a lot of overlap between those two fan bases. Vincent Prince. The kings of Ruffles.
Ruffles have princes. But also, we want to mention the Instagram of Forest Lawn itself. At Forest Lawn Museum. It's just the museum. It's not, the cemetery has its own thing, but the museum at Forest Lawn Museum. Follow them as well. It's fun. Go to it. It's an all-around nice experience.
It is. You're in a beautiful location in the city. You have a great view, and it's free. The museum's free, and it's got good stuff. No part of that is a loss at all.
I want to see that thing. Like, I'm dying to see the full presentation of that thing, because it's, from what I understand, it's like drums and and then God did this.
You won't believe what they did to Jesus.
A Godzilla's munching on it.
Yeah. Make sure to check that place out, because I'm a frequent of Forest Lawn for many sad reasons, a couple good reasons. I'd stopped in the museum like one time, kind of like just wandered in there, and I wish that I had done that more as a patron of the arts.
Because you had to leave after you left, I spent some time with David, and I was just admiring. Admiring that
real package. This guy is a real dude. This is an all man here.
There's a lot of things to see hidden everywhere in that place.
They designed it. It's just like a beautiful setting of the city.
Serene place.
It's a serene place.
People were just walking
from the city.
Like that was their walk for the day.
A quiet place. Full of respect, Daniel.
Let me drop in something. Auga indeed. It's time for you to hear our field trip episodes of the Forest Lawn Museum. Auga, everybody.
Auga to us all.
Auga Chaka.
Respectful as always.
This is a good volume. I don't need to go louder, or you can adjust it if I go too loud.
Yeah.
If you start,
I'll bleep it out.
He said so. Karaoke right now. We'll worry about that later.
So, who are you and how long have you lived in LA?
My name is James Fishburne, and I have lived in LA for 13 years. I came in 2006 to do my master's and PhD in art history at UCLA.
Cool. And you're from Chicago, you were saying?
I am actually a Navy brat. I lived.
So you're from everywhere.
I'm
a citizen of the world.
I'm a citizen of the world. I was born in the DC area, but I've lived all over the U.S., and I'm glad I've lived in L.A. longer than anywhere else, and I'm happy to be here.
Oh, cool. Okay. So where are we right now?
We're at Forest Lawn Museum at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale.
So what do you do here?
I am the museum director, so I organize and curate exhibitions. I also run tours, and I sort of oversee the art both in the museum and at Glendale in general, and then also at the other Forest Lawn Memorial Parks throughout Southern California.
So you're covering all that, because the other ones don't. Do they have museums or?
Glendale is the only one with a museum, but there is art at all of our parks.
Right.
Statues, mosaics, some paintings, but mostly exterior art.
Yeah.
So statues and mosaics are the biggest.
Do they? Because I remember when we were talking about it in the episode, I know that the Hollywood Hills one is more colonial focused. Do they each have their own focus, or is it just kind of?
Long Beach, Forest Lawn Long Beach has sort of a Spanish colonial style, sort of a mission style.
Okay.
And there's definitely sort of a colonial patriotic style at Hollywood Hills. And Glendale has sort of a medieval Renaissance style to it. The others don't have as specific style.
Now I'm always asking, how do people get into? Because you always talk to museum people, and I want to know, how did you get into it?
Yeah, art history. I studied art history as an undergrad. I studied abroad in Rome, and I loved it. Believe it or not, I was in the Navy after undergrad. I did ROTC.
Just couldn't get enough of that.
I was in the Navy, and
he's gonna sing the song.
I promise I won't sing. But then I got out of the Navy, and I loved art history so much, I went to grad school for it, and my focus was Italian Renaissance. Okay. And living in Los Angeles in the 21st century, studying Italian Renaissance art history, I kind of thought, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And it turns out I now work at the place with the world's largest collection of full-scale marble replicas of Michelangelo's work.
Right.
So it kind of has worked out very nicely.
What's this place's role in the city, do you think?
That's a good question. I think in the history of LA, it really was among the first places to provide free public art. Yeah. Its goal was to sort of bring the grand tour of European art to the United States, to Southern California, at a time when that was not available. Our founder was inspired by, among other things, the 1915 World's Fair that was in San Francisco. And he went to that in 1915, he saw it, and he kind of said, I can do that. And he tried to, and through architecture and through replicas and through some original art as well, he sort of created this grand tour when it wasn't really available in Southern California. You couldn't fly at that point to Europe.
Right.
So it really brought something that was...
Unless you're doing aerial photography.
Oh, that's a good point.
Pigeons.
Pigeons, transcontinental pigeons. That's a good point.
We're willing to take you. Yes.
Well, before we get into the exhibit that's going on right now, this place, it's a unique place because it has nothing to do with a cemetery, this museum, but it's inside of a cemetery. It's just a museum that happens to be inside of a cemetery, and I can't think of another place that's like that.
Yeah.
Yes. We're an unorthodox arts institution is how I like to describe it, but it's a really great place. Forest Lawn has used art for over a century as a way to sort of celebrate life and celebrate culture, celebrate cultures of the past, but also celebrate, the living, and it's a place where people can come and artists can sketch. Yeah. We have field trips, and that was the design from the start. And we still have field trips. We had field trips last week, and I have a couple on the books for next week.
And because right now the exhibit, let's talk about the exhibit that's going on right now, the aerial photography one.
Yes. So we just opened our new exhibition called The Elevated Eye, Aerial Photography Past and Present. And it has nearly 150 images, plus about 15 minutes of drone video, plus some actual pieces of technology, drones and satellites. And it covers over a century of aerial photography. Covers very early aerial photography taken from hot air balloons, but also, as you're alluding to, kites and even pigeon photography.
Those are such great photos.
They're really fun photos. That when someone strapped cameras to pigeons and got some what really do look like drone photos from circa 1908. Yeah. And then another section of the exhibition is early LA photography, and we have a great series of images from the LA Public Library. And then we also have almost 20 images from our own Forest Lawn archive, and these have never been displayed before.
Oh, really?
It was my first week on the job, and I found 4 albums of aerial photographs documenting Forest Lawn's development from the air. And some really incredible stuff. Some that show, we had this huge property sign that looked like the Hollywood sign.
Yeah.
It was put up in 1925. That's only 2 years after the Hollywood sign went up in 1923. We have this thing called the Tower of Legends that used to be, I know it's a pretty grand and
Great
imposing
name for a comic book store.
Yeah, Tower of Legends. And it was just our water tower, but it was decorated with art.
The Legend of Water.
There you go. But it was decorated with art,
Yeah.
and it shows the Easter sunrise service with about 10,000 people in front of it.
And some of the worst parking jobs.
Yeah.
And
ever,
yes,
as you were saying,
people are quadruple parked.
Could a Model T even parallel park like that?
Oh, that's a good question.
How did they just like push it in? I don't know.
To the Peterson.
Because half of it is the current exhibit. Is the other half the permanent thing, or how does it? Is that how it kind of works?
So the Elevated Eye, the temporary exhibition, takes up 2 of our 3 galleries.
Okay.
And when does that run till? Just so we know.
That runs through March 8th.
Okay,
So just opened, got a few months left.
Cool.
And then our front gallery is permanent collection.
Okay.
And that was actually just reinstalled. We completed a renovation where we added ADA accessible doors, added a new state-of-the-art lighting system, pulled out our old floor and laid a new polished concrete floor. That took a long time, but if you want it done right, you gotta take some time for it.
Yeah.
And that's our front gallery, and it's mostly European and American sculpture and painting. And then we have art throughout the park.
Yeah.
There's more than just the museum.
Where is this archive that you're space?
That is, it's stored in a couple locations on site. One of them is within the museum itself, and one is in another administration building.
Okay.
So-
I heard that there was a coin collection of like every coin that was mentioned in the Bible.
Yes, that was deaccessioned several years ago. I think about a decade ago.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right.
Faulty information I got on that.
It was,
boy.
you're reading probably an old visitor guide.
Yeah.
Probably very old from the research I was doing. But I want to hear a little bit more about, because there's the statue of David, and there's the giant crucifixion, resurrection stuff. I want to hear, because that's fascinating to me.
So our museum has 3 galleries, but as I was saying, there's lots of art outside of the galleries. Right next to the museum is a building called the Hall of Crucifixion Resurrection. It was built to house 1 painting. It now has 2 paintings.
We found the room.
The first painting is a 195-foot wide, 45-foot tall painting of the crucifixion, or more accurately, the moment right before the crucifixion. It was originally a panorama. It was originally presented in the round, and you sort of walked into it. It was painted in the 1890s, came to the U.S. for the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis. Didn't get displayed, didn't fit in the building.
Yeah.
The artist couldn't pay his export fees, and long story short, we ended up with it in the 1940s.
Isn't it like the largest permanently displayed like religious picture in the world or something like that?
Possibly. I can say it's not the world's largest painting.
Right.
I've heard it been described as the world's largest framed painting because it has a frame.
So it's the world's
Technicality.
largest frame in the world.
That's a good point. 2 for 1 right there. Yeah.
The world's largest frame painting.
Unless of course there's like some empty frame.
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
196 feet long.
We got to do research on that now.
Yeah. So we built the building just for that painting, just to display it. It has an 800-person auditorium. You can have, like state funerals and things like that, but we also have lectures in there. We have a movie screen in there. For Dia de los Muertos, we're actually showing Coco.
Oh, cool.
So it's a really great space.
Yeah.
We have concerts in there a couple times a year. But that was built in 1951, and then in 1965 we completed the sequel to that, which is the Resurrection. And
Didn't take 3 days.
hey, the painting did not take 3 days. Exactly. It took over a decade to find the right artist. And that painting, believe it or not, it literally slides on a track in front of the painting. And we have about a 25-minute audio-visual presentation that sort of tells the story of the painting coming here, tells the story of Forest Lawn a bit, and then tells what you see in the painting. Because both of them are pretty complex. It's more than just one thing happening. It's sort of a whole narrative within.
I mean, that big, it's gotta be.
Exactly. It's not a snapshot of a single moment. It's a series of moments sort of shown in there. That's the Hall of Crucifixion and Resurrection. and that's right next to the museum. And then we also have, one of my favorite spots is called the Court of David, and we have a full-scale marble replica of Michelangelo's David. We commissioned it in 1937. It arrived in Glendale, and then in 1971, it fell from an earthquake. It fell again in 94 in the Northridge earthquake.
Oh, okay.
In the Northridge earthquake. We now have a new one, and it has a base that is stabilized in such a way that it should be able to sway a little bit during an earthquake up to a certain degree.
Should be.
Yeah.
And you also kept the old one, too.
Yes, we kept the old one, and the head and one of the feet are on display in the gallery
To ward off other earthquakes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, to kind of, I really like the head and the foot because you get to a close encounter with this really massive piece that you lose a sense of scale so easily when it's up on the pedestal or when you're in Florence and it's in the museum.
But then there's all, like, throughout this park and the other ones, there's all these stained glass, and these, I know that at the Hollywood Hills one, I didn't get close enough to it, but there was some huge mural out there. There's like these huge, massive works everywhere.
Yes. So we have also the Great Mausoleum in Glendale, which has an incredible collection of stained glass and has a full-scale stained glass reproduction of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, but many other pieces of stained glass as well. And then the piece you're referring to in Hollywood Hills is an enormous mural of mosaics. And it's actually, it's a series of scenes from early American history, essentially from the Mayflower through the Revolutionary War. And it is made of millions and millions, literally about 10 million tesserae, as they're called, the little bits that make up a mosaic. That was done by Italian mosaicists in the 60s, done in pieces, and then shipped over here and installed. And it's called The Birth of Liberty. Yes, painstakingly.
Well, say the title one more time because I cut you off.
It's okay. That's called The Birth of Liberty.
You better cut him off.
That's The Birth of Liberty mosaic.
Thank you.
How long did that take? Because that sounds...
It took several years. I'd say under a decade, but you have a whole team of people working on it.
I'm just imagining like Jackson Pollock.
He would just like splatter tiles. He'd be quick.
I guess it's a mosaic. He would say it's the whole history of America. I guess. So, what would you say is the most important thing here?
The most important single artwork might actually be a painting we have called "Song of the Angels," and it's by William Adolph Bouguereau. And he was a contemporary of Monet and Manet and the Impressionists. However, he was not an Impressionist. He was a very academic painter. He worked dozens of figure studies and sketches, worked in painstaking detail in oil on canvas. And we have one of his finest works. And the original is currently on a nationwide exhibition. It went from Milwaukee to Memphis and is headed to San Diego shortly, but it'll be back in our galleries in 2020. And it is just one of the finest works of that artist. And he's sort of having a moment. People have sort of rediscovered him. He wasn't avant-garde in his style, but he was really, really good. He knew what he was doing as a painter, even if he wasn't, stylistically sort of breaking ground.
I forgot that you had mentioned that there's also a sculpture from the guy who did Mount Rushmore, which is, it's weird to, like, he didn't only work in mountain.
Right, that he had more time after finishing the mountain. Exactly. We have actually a couple sculptures, one marble and a couple bronzes by Gutzon Borglum, who sculpted Mount Rushmore.
I know a lot of names I'm only barely familiar with.
I will confess, I didn't actually know Gutzon Borglum by name before I came here, but now I'm quite familiar.
I think you might have answered this already, but let's touch on it again. What's your favorite thing here?
My favorite thing might be the Court of David. It's a nice outdoor spot, and it overlooks the city, and you have full-scale David right there, and it actually is recreating not the site where the David originally was, but a site across the river in Florence that overlooks the city that today has a recreation.
I've been there.
It's a beautiful spot. It's called the Piazzale Michelangelo. It celebrates the life of Michelangelo, and we have this other spot, and instead of overlooking Florence and the Arno River, you actually overlook the LA skyline and the LA River.
So that's another thing of there's all the art. You look this way and there's all the art, and then you look that way. And speaking of aerial views, you see
one of the best views in the city.
It really is. And you're sort of in this huge green space. We have both a lawn and sort of forest. We have forest and lawn here, so ask for it by name.
Unless you're parked at the bottom of the hill and think you're at the right place, like I was. What would you say LA would be like without this place?
I'd say it would have taken us a lot longer to get art here, an art scene. It really was sort of in on the ground floor and bringing art and bringing culture to Los Angeles.
What was here in terms of art, like before?
I believe that LACMA was sort of part of a larger museum complex, sort of like Science Center, but it was just sort of one wing of that.
Yeah.
Natural
History
and then, so it was over by the Natural History Museum there. And then the Huntington opened 100 years ago now, but they didn't open to the public till a few years later. So it was private collections mostly. So they weren't open to the public, but this was open to the public, which is, one of the great things about it.
Right. Thank you. Sorry,
correct.
I got lost.
Good, correct answer.
I'm trying to think of the name of it. You stumped us. Yeah. What's the strangest thing that's happened here?
It's my understanding that in the very, very early days, there was like an Old West style gunfight outside on like the main street outside, and it's one of the history books. One of the history books someone's written about that. Wow. But that was that we've been around since 1906, so it was a different world back then. Yeah. That's to my knowledge. That's one of the strangest things. Yeah,
gunfight at Forest Lawn.
Yeah,
is it true that because this is also what we read for our episode, that the gates are the biggest wrought iron gates in the world?
That is my understanding. I haven't done measured compared to Buckingham Palace.
Yeah.
But I believe they're height wise. Yeah, I believe that they are. And our founder, who chose a lot of the artworks. He did a lot of travel in Europe, and we have a lot of photos of sort of English manors and palaces. Right. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was actually looking specifically at Buckingham Palace, if he was trying to out Buckingham.
Right. Yeah, I could beat that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you talk about, because I know that all the churches and all the buildings are kind of modeled after other churches in Europe. Because I passed by Tam O'Shanter on the way here, and I'm like, that's a nice old building. And then I come here, and it's like, oh, that's a nice old building. Yeah, that's another nice old building. It does have a kind of Disneyland sort of feel, the old, whatever that part of Disneyland is called.
No, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because so Disneyland opened in 1955, and so we were here before that. Now, of course, Disney was making movies at that point and had this sort of old Europe, old English aesthetic. I have to imagine that Disney influenced us, but then I have to imagine that this sort of enclosed European-style world must have influenced Disney and Disneyland in some way. So I think there is probably a sort of echo chamber effect. And so speaking of the Tam O'Shanter, Walt Disney has his table there. Walt Disney used to eat there all the time. Supposedly our founder, Dr. Hubert Eaton, would lunch with him at the Tam O'Shanter. So it's a small world.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that it would be...
Well played.
I didn't even...
Now he's going to sing again.
Yeah,
it's a Pirates of the Caribbean world. Because it was like a tourist attract just to come to Forest Lawn and see things, and people would refer to it as the Disneyland. I forget what they said. They called it Disneyland something
in some way. Yeah.
Supposedly we were the largest tourist attraction in Southern California prior to Disneyland opening, and we still have many visitors. We have. Won't kid ourselves. We have more competition now. There's a lot more things to do in LA than there were prior to 1955. But we still do have a lot of visitors, and it is a really, it's free, so it's a great place to go. Yeah. Even if you're just going to come for an hour or so, it's really nice and sort of peaceful.
And how many beautiful parks that are really quiet are both in the city near downtown center and have a museum attached? Like not many.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
What would you say is this place's best kept secret?
I think that our massive crucifixion painting somehow is still a best kept secret. It's amazing, and not enough people know about
60
it.
or 50-something-year-old best kept secret.
Exactly. It's enormous. You can see the building from everywhere. You can see it from the 2, from the 5, from Griffith Park. You can see it from everywhere, but come inside.
I thought that was the museum.
Right.
Yeah. Before I knew about that painting.
It's enormous, and you can even see the extra wing. We built an extra wing for the sequel painting. And you'll see it. It's sort of this annex. Yeah. And they painted the resurrection painting in that. That was a studio. Wow. It's a studio, and it's also where it's stored.
Yeah, we're not moving it.
No. Why would we move it? Exactly.
In here, it's staying here.
Yeah.
This is an easy one. What's the best time to come here?
My favorite time is mid-afternoon, late afternoon. We close at 5, so don't come after that.
Yeah.
But the sunlight for the stained glass is really great between maybe 3 and 4:15.
Okay.
The sunlight is the best. The sunlight's it's always good in the stained glass, but 3 to 4:15 is I think the best time to come.
It's very specific, and I wasn't expecting that. That's
Okay.
maybe the best answer we've had for that question.
All right.
Is the place that has the stained glass, what is it? The Hall of the Stained Glass? What is it
Hall
called?
of
The Great Mausoleum?
The Great Mausoleum.
Yes.
Is that, because I heard that there's something that's not open to the public because like it's a lot of celebrities and they don't want people just
There's
going
a
in.
couple different wings that are not open
Okay,
to the
just
public.
some wings. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
you could still go in and see
There's still
at 3 to
lot-
4:15.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's still dozens of windows and sculptures that you can see in there.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really terrific site.
Okay, so now here's a question I should have asked a day ago. Where should you park to come here?
How do I get here?
Fortunately, not only is Forest Lawn Museum free, parking is free and it's
Yeah.
plentiful. We have a
Yep.
huge parking lot right in front of the museum
Yeah.
and in front of the mausoleum, in front of the Court of David. So that's not an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because I always kind of wonder this at cemeteries. You're allowed to, if you're just on kind of the road, you could just pull over if you want to walk
Yeah.
somewhere. Okay.
Yeah, you can just
I
pull
always
over.
wonder that. I'm always keeping an eye on my car, make sure I'm not
park
going
outside the gate,
Yeah, I park in the middle of Glendale Boulevard and just walk over. Here comes a weird question for where we are.
What's the best place to eat around here?
So we unfortunately don't have a restaurant here.
Fair.
I want them to put in a coffee cart.
Okay.
And we have food for special events. We have food, but Tam O'Shanter's nice.
Yes.
Porto's isn't far away. Who doesn't love Porto's?
Yeah.
And the Village Bakery and Cafe on Los Feliz is not far. I went there for lunch today.
Ooh.
So many dining options nearby.
Yeah.
You know, you bring up because I know that kind of one of the forces for Eaton to creating this place is kind of have everything here. Like
Yes.
you can have everything you need for a funeral is here. They should have like a banquet hall or something like that for eating.
Cafeteria.
Afterward. Something.
I know.
A banquet hall.
So we have grand names for things. They probably would have named it like the banquet hall.
Yeah.
But we originally the museum was going to be like a tea shop and gift shop.
Okay.
But fortunately for me, it is a museum. It worked out well for me. Now that means I had to bring my lunch, but or go out. It would be nice, but
Yeah.
there are good dining options very
Yes.
Yeah,
close.
you can't have everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the questions I think we have.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thanks for
doing
sitting with
this.
us.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Now let's go see that giant painting.